So the loss of BASL was largely due to when schools were desegregated, there were a large number of white teachers, meaning that they focused on teaching ASL and discouraged the use of BASL. This left many Black deaf students confused and forced to conform to understand their peers in school. Outside of school, Black deaf kids were often told by their Black peers that they sounded too white, causing these kids to have to code switch. Black deaf students were encouraged to focus on vocational careers such as repairing shoes and were not given the same opportunities as their white classmates. Therefore, the number of Black educators was low at this time. So next is the Black deaf community takes a new direction. So the Southern School for the Deaf, as SSD, as it is known to the Black deaf alumni, was the last segregated deaf school in America to close in 1978. The school started in 1938. Signing was forbidden in class, but they had to fingerspell everything. In the outside world, they quickly realized that their sign was different from that of their white peers, specifically the sign for school, which in ASL it is like this, and in Black ASL it was like this. So all the teachers were Black, and the only white people that they saw were clergymen who could sign, but they were signing in ASL. So they learned sign from that, but they also made the Black deaf students at that school work as a free form of labor. And after World War II, Black deaf people found themselves in a need of a place to meet, so they began to form their own clubs, congregations, and organizations. The Deaf Club is essentially a deaf person's second home, providing a place where the deaf community can come together, exchange ideas, and develop friendships, participate in social events, and have the opportunity to attain a leadership position within the deaf community. Because of the denied acceptance and membership in deaf organizations and clubs that were exclusively for white deaf persons, Black deaf organizations arose during the 1950s and 1960s, specifically in the urban cities where large numbers of Black deaf residents where Black deaf residents resided, such as Atlanta, Baltimore, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. At the National Association of the Deaf NAD convention held in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1980, a group of Black deaf leaders presented a list of concerns to the convention delegates. This included issues such as the NAD's lack of attentiveness to the concerns of Black deaf Americans, as well as the lack of representation of Black deaf individuals as convention delegates. They were specifically requested NAD to take action to communicate better with the Black deaf community, encourage the involvement of minorities within the national and state organizations, and recruit more Black deaf children in the junior NAD and NAD youth leadership camp, all of which hindered Black deaf people's goals of achieving their full potential. Currently, the NAD has more than over 30 local chapters and sponsors a variety of programs. And ultimately, in 1981, this resulted in the formation of the National Black Deaf Advocates, NBDA, in 1982. The NBDA is the official advocacy organization for thousands of Black, deaf, and hard of hearing advocates. For more than 3 decades, NBDA has been at the forefront for advocacy efforts for civil rights and equal access to education, employment, and social services on behalf of the Black, deaf, and hard of hearing in the United States. So now the NBDA has over 30 local chapters and sponsors a variety of programs like leadership training, programs for high school and college students, a Miss Black Deaf America pageant, leadership opportunities at the local and national levels, workshops at regional and national conferences, and scholarship programs for deserving Black deaf college students. So leaders of the Black deaf community. Much of what the Black deaf community has accomplished today is due to past leaders who have paved the way for us. Dr. David James and Dr. Glenn B. Anderson are the first Black deaf persons to earn a doctorate in 1977 and 1982, respectively. Dr. Shirley Allen became the first Black deaf woman to earn a doctorate in 1992, and today there are now approximately 20 known Black deaf scholars. New additions include Dr. Rez, our teacher, and Dr. Janelle Rouse, who was the first known Black deaf Canadian with a doctorate's degree. Dr. Carolyn McCaskill is also a very notable Black deaf person within the deaf community. She is the second Black deaf female to earn a PhD from Gallaudet. She is also known for signing Black in America, which is the first documentary about Black ASL, the unique dialect of American Sign Language ASL that developed within historically segregated African American deaf communities. Black ASL today conveys an identity and sense of belonging that mirrors spoken language and facial expressions that mirrors spoken language of the African American hearing community. Different uses of space, hand use, directional movement, and facial expressions are the way that Black ASL distinguishes itself as a vibrant dialect of American Sign Language. The African American deaf community is now embracing their unique variety as a symbol of solidarity and a vital part of their identity. If we want to dismantle anti-Black linguistic racism, we must include Black ASL. This documentary is a crucial tool we can use to start that conversation. This documentary was screened in 2020 and aired on PBS stations in select cities, highlighting the history and development of Black ASL. Black ASL content crossed the border into Canadian TV and inspired Black deaf Canadians to advocate for further research of BASL in the Canadian Black deaf community. Dr. Carolyn McCaskill and Dr. Rez were both in the video we watched this past weekend titled "Is ASL Too White?" Much of the reasoning on why ASL is the way it is today is because it has been altered to focus on white people's impact. By discrediting other minorities' experiences, we are damaging the diversity of ASL. To expand the diversity of ASL, much of Dr. Carolyn McCaskill's studies have been dedicated to BASL and its roots being from Ebonics, emphasizing that it is a real dialect and not just slang. Additionally, in 2020, Gallaudet established the first of its kind Center for the Black Deaf Studies, CBDS, whose founding director is Dr. Carolyn McCaskill. One of CBDS's goals is to offer a minor focusing on the histories and cultures of African Americans with an appreciation for the historical, social, and political impacts of Africa and the African diaspora. So where is Black ASL today? Black ASL is still used today, but mostly by older generations and Black deaf families who have used BSL for generations. Gen Z is attempting to be more inclusive and are celebrating different cultures/languages. Cartoon Network has a show featuring ASL and BASL called Craig of the Creek. And this Cartoon Network series was monitored and assisted by Black Deaf Advocates, a national deaf support group who consulted on the episode. The representation in the show is amazing, and I've personally never seen this before. The monumental steps Cartoon Network is making by having a show that displays inclusivity of not only white ASL, but also BASL. This will open up so many doorways for both dialects, as it will motivate little kids and make them excited to be deaf, as they now have a character in mainstream media that looks like them. So it is so important that every kid has an opportunity to see themselves or see other kids who are not like them, to see how they are the same in some ways. The show will also educate people who do not know about BASL, who maybe want to learn now. The comments on the TikTok I will show are all the same. Wait, there's a difference between ASL and BASL? And that's a problem many people do not know, because institutions have historically looked down upon BASL. Hopefully this will reach Black deaf children who are unaware of this community of people. Craig of the Creek has featured LGBTQ characters in its plot before, including the non-binary character Angel Jose, as well as the pair of lesbian Creek witches, Courtney and Tabitha. Additionally, the exposure of a Black deaf dad signing to his child and the emphasis the show places on that is so crucial to deaf parents. And another up-and-coming person who is showing Black ASL is Nikita Smith, or AKA Charmaine. And Charmaine, or Nikita Smith, is the fourth deaf generation of 5 generations and knows BASL. Ever since going viral on TikTok, she has become a social media influencer who has been featured on New York Times and Netflix. The TikTok page features her advocating for BASL and its legitimacy as a dialect of ASL. She often shows her videos the testimonies of her grandparents and parents, showing their signs from the late 1800s and 1900s and emphasizing that they still use them today. She also shows the difference between many ASL and BASL signs, stating that the main difference between the two is seasoning. Those 2 videos will show after this presentation. And then, so the main majority of Black deaf people identify more with their ethnicity than their deafness due to the shared struggle of racism and oppression experienced aligned with the African American community. Two Black deaf women, the multi-talented creative director Storm Smith and actress Natasha O'Feely, wrote and produced a short film, Am I Next?, spotlighting Black deaf individual struggles that represents Black deaf people's experience navigating through systematic discrimination on the grounds of race on a daily basis. So Am I Next spotlights the struggle and oppression perpetrated by systematic racism that Black deaf people experience daily, the police brutality, the nonverbal communications about race in our community, the racist comments, the stares of "you don't belong here, go back to where you came from." She is quoted saying, "Daily we ask ourselves, am I next?" So we carry our strengths and resiliences, yet we are in constant fear of our last breath. Will it be sooner than expected? The film contains no audio and sound, but the words and visuals of the Black deaf community speaks volumes. Thank you. And here is our works cited.